Hello, Internet. I'm Spots, and let's get this over with.
I think I got my swagger back. Oh.
Before I take a nosedive into the inevitable, I want to mention a little something. My current roommates just started a rock band, Crushing Plains, and they're gearing up to release some music very soon. So you should totally go subscribe to their YouTube channel, follow them on Instagram, and like them on Facebook and whatnot, because I've earned a whopping $0.00 from multiple years on the platform, and if they can get popular, maybe there's some hope for me in this channel. Anyways, back to business. 21 Pilots, a musical duo out of Columbus, Ohio that have taken the charts by storm over the past few years. They make music that, quite frankly, doesn't give a crap about genres and would much rather run around screaming about how life-changing singing My Chemical Romance was in concert that one time in high school. Like, seriously, y'all, it changed everything. From my perspective, the biggest reason these two fellas are so massive is due in large part to the vulnerable nature of the lyrics and the emotional delivery by frontman Tyler Joseph, which, despite the most generic name ever, manages to have a voice that is anything but. Today, I'm going to count down the 15 best 21 Pilots songs, and instead of just throwing them at you, I'm going to explain why each song made the list. So buckle up and fasten your seatbelt, because we're about to take a flight with 21 Pilots, piloted by me.
You are surrounding all my surroundings, sounding down the mountain range of my left side brain.
Is art better when there's meaning or purpose for its existence? While there are certainly dozens of ways to respond to or even counter this question, Holding On to You pushes listeners to analyze themselves and realize that everyone has the ability to view the world in a profound way that should push us to dive deeper than just a simple melody. So, sure. Now, obviously, like most art, meaning can oftentimes be left up to individual interpretation, but taking into account how beautifully articulated my perspective was on the already deep subject matter, you can go ahead and consider this genius verified. I love rock music. In fact, I would go as far to say that it's my favorite genre. And while in the past it seemed like 21 Pilots was more interested in exploring sonic avenues with only subtle traces of rock here and there, I was often left hoping they would try something heavy. The energy, lyrical ability, and character was all there, and it just seemed like they could make it work. Much to my enjoyment, Jumpsuit hit the ground running, and quite frankly, was one of the best rock songs of 2018. The bass riff, the gritty vocals, it's heavy, and my gosh do I wish there was more of it on the radio. The crazy thing is, these two boys from Columbus, Ohio rocked harder in the last 30 seconds of Jumpsuit than a significant amount of some pretty iconic rock groups did in the entirety of 2018. Not gonna point any fingers, but seriously, please don't let this be your last visit to this side of town, because we need you.
Then the wages of war will start inside my head with my counterparts, and the emotionless marchers will chant the phrase, "This line's the only way."
I have so much respect for the DIY mindset, but let's be honest with ourselves. 80% of those musical efforts oftentimes step onto the scene with a footprint the size of a single piano key. Because you gotta be realistic after all. Is a 5-part vocal harmony with a guitar solo really appropriate when you're tracking vocals with a hairbrush? Probably not. But occasionally, someone comes along that takes the time and effort to pour their soul into something that at first glance might seem a little too ambitious for a home studio. The scale of March to the Sea is incredible to me, especially considering the humble fashion in which it was created. And guess what? It totally works. The story Tyler is mapping out for us here is great, the tremolo effect on the synthesizers are fantastic, and his emotional delivery marks this track as one of my personal favorites from their self-titled release.
What? Not Addict with a pen or taxi cab? Are you a moron?
Oh the skeleton click.
Oh my gosh, you're such a freaking poser! We're banditos now, don't you know anything?
There's an infestation in my mind's imagination. I hope they choke on smokers, I'm smoking them like a basement. This is not rap, this is not hip-hop. Just another attempt to make the voices stop.
Spots? I thought you said this was a musical duo. Seems to me like the only person you've been name-dropping up to this point is Tyler. If you were a real fan of the band, you would have mentioned Shot for
Hey, relax. I'm not done yet. Kill me. Josh Dunn is the other half of 21 Pilots, handling all things percussion, and hair, apparently. The dude brings a crazy amount of energy and force to their overall sound, and Heavy Dirty Soul is a fantastic display of that fact. The drumming is urgent and aggressive, which is a great match for Tyler's fast-paced rapping and the menacing production work. Also, the bridge, "Death inspires me like a dog inspires a rabbit," that's some solid lyric writing right there.
Sipping on straight glory, let the vibe slide over me.
Quality production work is oftentimes drastically underappreciated. Unless, of course, you jump into a pool full of the stuff, then you'd be stupid to not open your mouth and swallow that sweet nectar like goat milk.
Disclaimer. This was a pathetic attempt at a metaphor. Do not drink pool water.
The atmosphere and lyrics found in Chlorine progress in such a way that by the time the track rolls to an end, Tyler has us in a beautifully personal space, where he reflects on how small he is in the grand scheme of things, which eventually leads to him crying out in humility for guidance and fulfilling his purpose in life. Yeah, some deep stuff right there. Think about that the next time you jump into a pee-filled hole in the ground.
I'm out of my mind. Oh, I'm not seeing things right.
So, this pick might be a bit of a surprise, but my reasoning for including Not Today is that it was the first 21 Pilots song that I've ever heard and thought, there should really be a live version of this that features a full orchestra and choir, because this just begs for a large-scale display. There's a lot of subtle moving parts featured in the production work that seem to go unnoticed, and if people could see everything, I think they would realize the magnitude of the sound here. Beyond just the typical piano, bass, guitar, drums, and lead vocals, there's a generous brass section that includes Josh on the trumpet, an old electric organ, some well-rounded backing vocals, and even a flute. All this comes together to form one of their biggest sounding songs to date, and for some reason, it's just one of those tracks that seems to get lost in the shuffle more often than not. Well, not today.
Hey, I'm still here and you're still not funny.
I have a bit of a weird relationship with Ode to Sleep because for the better part of 2 years, my current roommate's alarm clock was this song, and while the irony has me rolling on the floor, after hearing the intro so many times, I started to hate the first 15 seconds with a passion. But here's the good news. The sound of this track is so incredibly diverse that within minutes, it's like you're listening to something completely different. Things start out in a very dark and haunting place until eventually Tyler wakes up and begins reflecting on the struggles he just went through. The tempo increases and he begins to sing with more enthusiasm and optimism until finally, the chorus floods into the room and with a surge of hope, he faces his demons head on. Great stuff for sure. Except for the first 15 seconds.
Nobody thinks what I think. Nobody dreams when they blink. Think things on the brink of blasphemy. I'm my own shrink. Think things are after me. I'm my catastrophe at my kitchen sink. You don't know what that means. Because a kitchen sink to you is not a kitchen sink to me.
Okay, so earlier I mentioned the emotional appeal of 21 Pilots, and from where I'm sitting, Kitchen Sink is arguably their best example of that. The man sounds like he's having an emotional breakdown on the microphone without actually, just straight up crying for 5 minutes. The delivery is fantastic, and the lyrics here are just so unique and meaningful, but instead of me trying to explain, which I would no doubt do flawlessly, I'm gonna let someone else give it a shot.
Our generation of people, we struggle with some things. We struggle with a lot of suicide and depression, and not that I claim to be any sort of professional opinion on those topics, but what I found out is those two issues are really centered around the idea of purpose, because I feel like if I had purpose, I'd be able to conquer these two things. And I found through art that you can create the beginning of purpose for you. Not all of purpose, because that's just such a huge thing, but the beginning of purpose can be found by creating something that only you understand. So for me, something happened to me at a kitchen sink that was it was awesome, it was good, it was emotional, it was great. But the point is, I used that moment to help me get through my tough times, because the point is, I'm not going to tell you what happened at that kitchen sink. Kitchen sink to you is not a kitchen sink to me.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, that kind of felt like a cop-out answer, and if so, congratulations, you have utterly failed the pop quiz. From this point forward, every time you do the dishes, you'll be working through all the possible scenarios Tyler could have experienced while standing in what is undeniably the lamest section of the kitchen.
They say stay in your lane, boy, and we go where we want to. They think this thing is a highway, but will they be alive tomorrow?
I'm gonna jump back on the Josh Dun hype train for just a bit and draw some well-deserved attention to Lane Boy. While there's a handful of reggae-infused tracks on Blurry Face, this one stands head and shoulders above the rest, with its fast tempo, incredibly catchy melody, and the way Josh works that hi-hat is nothing short of delicious. As the track progresses, everything continues to build in intensity until the final 30 seconds, when everything gets ripped away, and a subtle touch of synth provides just enough structure for Josh to roll out some truly fantastic fills.
Surrounded and up against the wall. I'll shred them all and go with you.
So, if there's one thing I can say that has become abundantly clear, it's that within the realm of pop music, there is currently one ring to rule them all: dat bass. The iconic 6-string spent years hogging the limelight, and now it's time for the beefy 4-string to have a turn. Or rather, that little box with the blinky buttons on it, I guess. Okay, so there's really no point in denying it. Stringed instrument cameos are pretty rare on the pop charts these days, which is fine. That's how art works, you know, ebbs and flows and whatnot. But I love that 21 Pilots made the decision to rely on an actual bass guitar to format the rhythm for My Blood, because my gosh, it brings so much. The slides, this hammer-on, it's so freaking groovy, and Tyler's falsetto vocals on the chorus pair flawlessly with the tone and atmosphere. All this comes together to form one of their best funky pop songs to date.
I ponder of something great. My lungs will fill and then deflate. They fill with fire, exhale desire. I know it's dire, my time today. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought, cause somebody stole my car radio and now I just sit in silence.
Food for thought. If a stolen radio system inspires a musician to write what is often considered to be their best work, should the robber be penalized for the before-mentioned crime? I honestly couldn't care less, but whoever did steal Tyler's radio needs to hit me up ASAP, cause that would be a gold mine on eBay. Obviously, if you're a 21 Pilots fan, I'm sure you're familiar with Car Radio. The track perfectly displays so many things about what makes these guys special. The emotion, Tyler's flow, the intense musical breakdown towards the end, and the lyrics, especially during the third stanza, are amazing. If for some very odd reason you're still watching this video and have never heard a single 21 Pilots song, first off, welcome to planet Earth. Second, this is a great place to start.
Oh, I know how to levitate up off my feet, and ever since the 7th grade I learned to fire breathe. And though I feed on things that fell, you can learn to levitate with just a little help. Learn to levitate with just a little help.
This might seem like an odd choice to have located so high on my list, but, and listen carefully, Tyler's production work here is masterful. Despite the track's runtime being under 2.5 minutes, the song is so intricately crafted and yet remarkably subtle that it took me multiple listens to fully wrap my head around what's going on here. Josh's steady rhythm on the drums drive the song, as the pulsating synthesizers that are so crisp they legitimately sound like swords being sharpened set the atmosphere. The pitch-shifted vocal harmonies add an extra punch to specific moments, while what I'm pretty sure is digitally altered vulture cries cut through the mix in a mesmerizing fashion. Oh yeah, and Tyler's rapping here is arguably some of his best to date. He fully leans into the hip-hop angle and proves beyond a shadow of a doubt he can flow with the best of them. It's a shame this track isn't more popular, but I understand how standing by itself, it might seem like a strange choice to draw so much attention to. If production and flow isn't enough justification to earn this spot on the list, tack on the entire concept of Trench, because I feel like this song perfectly sets the stage for everything the album has to offer.
Am I the only one I know? Waging my wars behind my face and above my throat.
Obviously, lyrics have been a major talking point thus far, and while it's up for debate if Tyler has ever released a song that can be considered terribly written, I think most people would be comfortable labeling Migraine as one of his finest lyrical achievements. The time and effort that clearly went into crafting this should be humbling to any aspiring musician, or poet for that matter. The wordplay, rhyme scheme, and overall structure displayed here is a masterwork, and the chorus melody is so punchy it instantly grabs you. My gosh, if my ghostwriter had a teaspoon of that talent, I'd be making millions right about now. Maybe that's why I can't seem to get this channel past 2,000 subs.
Down in the forest, we'll sing a chorus, one that everybody knows. Hands held higher, we'll be on fire, singing something nobody wrote.
One of 21 Pilots' oldest and most popular tracks with longtime fans is a little ditty called Trees. Originally featured on Tyler Joseph's solo album before the band was even formed, and while there's no denying it's solid, Forest, from Regional at Best, has always been my preferred romp in the woods with Tyler and Josh. The lyrics are drenched in a layer of vulnerability surrounding topics such as faith, fears, and insecurities, but what's fascinating to me is right as we transition into the chorus, Tyler leaves all this behind and chooses to focus on the positive influence that unity and music can have on us, and it is hands down my favorite 21 Pilots chorus. Here's the thing though, it's so much more than simply another catchy melody. Whenever I listen to Forest, it legitimately feels like the weight of the world is being lifted for a split second, and while it might seem like a strange word to use, that moment feels profoundly spiritual. And considering the fact that I'm little more than an oversized Beanie Baby, I can only imagine the effect such a song would have on a person. But hey, maybe I'm just crazy.
No, Spots, you're not crazy. I was so wrong about you. That was so beautiful. You're a real fan. You're a real fan of 21 Pilots, and I'm sorry I ever doubted you.
That's alright, buddy. Now time for my number one pick.
All my friends are heathens, take it slow.
What? This is your pick for number one? What is wrong with you? You're an absolute hypocrite. Oh, I'm melting.
Sorry about that, I just couldn't help myself. Oh, jeez. Before I jump into my actual selection for the number one spot, here are a few honorable mentions.
Blurry face and I care what you think. My name's the rise in awareness is beating a stigma that no longer scares us. But for sake of discussion, in spirit of fairness, could we give this some room for a new point of view? And then I saw him, tortured hand, he laid it out what he had planned. And then I said, I'll take the grave, but I can't when you all have guns for hands, yeah.
Okay, it is time for me to reveal the number one 21 Pilots song of all time. Drum roll, please. Or not, whatever.
No, I move slow. I don't wanna stop time. I'll sit here till I find the problem. No.
It's quite possible you didn't see this one coming, but hey, that's how cheetahs operate. Seriously though, I've never heard a song like this before, and the first time I listened to it, I didn't really know what to think. The lyrics include Tyler straight up admitting he probably should have deleted the track to begin with, but instead, he brings the listener into a surreal exploration of the highs and lows of the creative process, and wow. It honestly feels like we're in the studio with him, just desperately trying to pull something special from the chaos, all while fighting off the dreaded fear of losing one's ability to create. And as a creative type who strives for perfection more often than not, I can say this song speaks volumes. I adore Pet Cheetah, and while I'm quite certain it will never be a chart-topping hit, I honestly feel like what Tyler tapped into here is so much bigger than 21 Pilots. It's about dipping your heels into the work half of artwork. And it's emotional, beautiful, humbling, exhilarating, aggravating, and at times, remarkably fulfilling. And that is why it's the number one 21 Pilots song of all time, according to yours truly. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please subscribe, like, and all that. Oh, and one more time for good measure. Be sure to check out Crushing Planes. I'll share a link to their YouTube channel right now. New music coming soon.